What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Dan Smith here. On this channel, I tend to do a lot of fairly niche-ish, kind of intermediate, upper intermediate kind of things. So today I'm going to do something that's going to give the beginners a little bit of love. We're going to look at 5 beginner roadblocks and how to overcome them. So these are things, maybe you're self-taught, maybe you're just learning, and you get to these points and it's like, oh man, that's really frustrating, and you kind of get stuck. So I'm going to assume that maybe, you know, you've kind of conquered the cowboy chord universe and kind of got your open chords in check. And then maybe you're a kind of improving rhythm player and you're trying to get more into that, or maybe you're trying to delve into improvisation and the lead playing side of things, some techniques for that. So first up, let's look at bar chords. All right, so bar chords are one of those things where people, like I say, get the cowboy chord universe going, and then all of a sudden they find themselves staring into songs that aren't in the key of G, or playing with other musicians where it's not very guitar specific, and you have to get out of the sort of, whatever the opposite of the clean end of the neck, is that a thing? You have to get away from here and start delving up here. So the map has opened up. You've got your mount, you've got your horse, you've got your new sword and shield, and now you need to go off out into the world. So bar chords is a thing where people get quite stuck. So all a bar chord is, in simple terms, is if you imagine an open E chord down here, or maybe an E minor, all we're doing is taking that shape and allowing ourselves to move it up. So if we take a look at how many open strings our E chord has, starting from the low E string, we've got the open E, that's 1. And then we've got the A, which we're fretting, so that doesn't count. The D, which we're fretting, that doesn't count. The G, which we're fretting, so that doesn't count. And then the open B and the open E. So that's 3 open strings. Now, if I wanted to take this same shape and move it up a fret, I would have to move those open strings with me. So here, here, and here. So that's how this becomes, you switch your fingers around. So you've got your first finger spare, and then this first finger becomes nature's capo and goes here to now move what was the E shape up a fret. In this case, it's an F. And that works the same. So you can think of this as an E form or an E major shape. That's what people say, the E form. And then if you take your middle finger off, that is now minor. So you've got major and you've got minor, like that. What a lot of people do, they probably come across an F chord first. If you're playing songs in the key of C, the key of C has an F in it, so you get away from your, and then all of a sudden you've got to try and throw this F in like that. I would recommend not starting with get the shape, but don't start in F, only because it's down here and it's quite a stretch and the fret's a little bigger. Maybe try and move it up. So take the shape and move it up to perhaps the 5th fret, where it's a little bit more comfortable, a little bit kind of more in line with where your shoulder naturally wants to be, rather than down here. Problems that people come across. The big thing is getting all the strings to ring. So the hand position, if I do this and then I take the guitar away for a second, it is this kind of thing. Rather than this, you want to get rid of the bend in your fingers, because this finger needs to be straight. And a big part of that is the thumb. So not a lot of people constantly thinking about what's going on here. They don't necessarily think about what's going on behind the scenes, if it were, behind the neck. The thumb has a big part to play. If your thumb is too high, like this, it's going to put a natural curve into the fingers. And again, if I take the guitar away and my thumb's up here, you're going to get this. And what we want is more of this. So part of that is dropping the wrist a little bit. And I'll have my thumb kind of in the middle. You can see that. Sometimes if I tell people to drop the thumb, what they do is they keep the fingers like this and then they just move their thumb like that. And that's not what you want. You want to keep it in probably between here and here. So still sort of pointing upwards. Doesn't have to be directly up like that. But when I say drop the thumb, what you want to do is also drop the wrist into this kind of position. That's thing number 1 that people get stuck with. The other thing is people thinking that it is a very kind of, perpendicular kind of thing. They think it's this kind of head-on flat motion. Now, if you think about the way the hand works, you have control, obviously, over the fingers. What you don't really necessarily have control of is the bit that's doing the barring, which is this part of the finger. I mean, I'm not a doctor. I don't know what that part's called. Probably some kind of phalange or something. you can't really press that down. All the power is coming from the top here. It's not the strongest part of the finger. So rather than it being this head-on thing where this soft part of the finger is trying to push down that way, what I try and think about is making it ever so slightly to one side. You can't possibly put it on the side of your finger because that's impossible. But if you think about that and think about more of a twist, that's the key, the twist. So rather than trying to press down directly on like this, I'm thinking about twisting that way a little bit. So I'm trying to get it more, rather than on the front of the finger there, more on this side. If you can see that, on that side. So rather than pressing down straight on, I'm going to put it on, I'm going to squeeze in, and I'm going to try and twist that way a little bit. So almost twisting your hand that way towards the headstock. So you can almost see, if I just press on what I would consider head on, it'll look like this. It still works, but it's a lot harder to get that to ring. However, when I put it on and squeeze, and then I go this way a little bit, it's that little twist and squeeze that way that's going to get the chords to ring. Like that. And my thumb is about there. You see that? Like that. So that would be the major position. So that would be an E form on the E string at the position of an A, 5th fret. So it's an E shape, we've transposed it up, and now it's at the 5th fret, it's A. Like that. To make it minor, you just take the middle one off. Some people have issues with the minor shape as well, because then you're barring more strings. You've got to get 3 strings rather than three strings on the top rather than just the 2. So you take that off, and again, it's that twist position. If that's a bit tricky, what you can do is a bit of a cheat. I'm not really a fan of cheats. Cheaters never win. What you can do is you can get this middle finger and kind of let it just lean on there and kind of help that push twist motion that way. Like that. That's kind of useful if you're playing on a guitar that's got particularly high action, or you're trying to do bar chords on an acoustic, which can be a bit more tricky. And then once you've got that, if you can get that ringing, all you need to do is get it ringing once, and then you know you can do it. And then you just sort of go, right, I know it's possible, and then you can carry on. Obviously, it's a bit disheartening if you've got months and months of kind of on the top like that. And then once you've got that shape, practice just moving it down and get more comfortable in this bigger shape down here. So that's the major and minor bar chords rooted on the E string. The A shapes, so these are based on an A major and then an A minor in the cowboy chord universe. So we'll do the minor one first, because there's a couple of bad habits that people do which drive me insane. Same thing, if we take an A minor and we count how many open strings, we're not playing the E string, we're starting from the A, we've got an open A, that's 1, and then we've got fretted D, fretted G, fretted B, and then an open E. So we're only actually barring 2 strings. And if you consider the lowest note being on the tip of your finger, you're really only barring 1 string. So the 1 string is going to be in this part of the finger. So same thing, we did that and moved it up, we would switch to here, and then the first finger is going to take care of the other strings. So if we do that same thing and move it up to the 5th fret, which will give us a D minor. Now, this is one of the things where when people are learning these, bad habits can creep in, and there's reasons why. The first reason is I just find it irritating. I don't know why, I just do. I'm sorry. Is when people do this. So what I've done there is the chord should finish here. The root note of the chord is on the A string. And people bar like this. Like, this is an extreme case, but you see people doing this, and it's like, look how much space there is there hanging off the top of the guitar. Why? Why? This is the part of your finger that has all the power, and it's up here. You don't want to overbar. You want the chord to have a ceiling if it's an A rooted chord. It's going to finish on the A string like that. If you do this and you're learning, what can happen is, if I bar all the way up like that, it looks very close to this. And if you're learning them and trying to remember which one's which, that's D minor, that's A. all it is these three are on a different set of strings. So it can get a bit confusing as to which one's which. The other thing is, if I do that and I get this, I've got an A on the bottom, which is in the chord. It would be a D minor over A, technically, or a D minor with an A in the bass. However, you're playing with a bass player that wants to be... It wants to be hitting those Ds. If you're doing this and you're getting an A on the bottom, you're going to get in his way, and it's just going to sound quite muddy. Obviously, you can do that as a choice. But when you're learning, make sure you know exactly where the chord finishes, because that's going to be your root note, and that's going to be where the chord is going to be referenced. So this thing, don't do it. Don't do it. Make sure it's got a ceiling. And what a little advanced tip, don't worry about this too much right now if you're still learning these things, but is to let the tip of this finger, the first finger that is playing the root note, just nudge the E string a little bit from underneath. You don't need to bring it up. It can just find a position where it gets this note, and then it just touches the E to mute it out. So even if you hit all the strings, that one's not going to ring. Same thing, this first finger is going to be pulling that way slightly. So it's technically slightly easier than the A shape because you're only barring. It's only got to get this top string. It's part of the finger. Now, so that is the A rooted minor shape. By that I mean the root note. The D of our D minor is on the A string. When it comes to bar chords, there's only two bits of information really. One is it a major or minor shape? And two is what the root note is. So if you're trying to as well learn the notes on the fretboard, and you've got a chord progression in front of you, what you can do is just take your first finger and find where these root notes are. So if it went G, E minor, C, D, but you want to do it in bar chords, you could go G, E, C, D. And then you put the shapes on. Like that. Now, the A rooted A shape. So an A major chord, which we would normally use three fingers like that. Again, two open strings, the open A, the open E. When we move this up, there's a couple of ways you can do this. One of them I sort of disagree with, being very disagreeable today. But one of them, if you can avoid doing it that way, do. So if we move this again up one fret, we've got to move these two open strings. So how do you do it? Now, first instinct might be to do this. Replace these three, and then you've got your first finger. I think that's too many fingers for what it is. It's too many fingers for a basic major chord. Look at that, you're using 4 fingers when you could use 2 like this. It's a chord, not a Kit Kat. So if we move this up to D again, 5th fret, rather than this, we're going to get this. So now the bar is happening with this finger, the 3rd finger, not the 1st finger. Books will tell you that you've got to get this and get the 5th on the top. That is really hard to do, so don't worry about that. If you get just from the A string up to the B, there's enough information there to be the chord. This is the 5th of the chord, and you've already got a 5th here. It's no big deal. If you really wanted that, you'd probably do something like, you'd probably do a different shape. You'd probably abandon some of the low end and just do the kind of Motown thing. So, same thing. This 3rd finger is now going to be doing the bar, so it's going to go padding. So rather than the tip of your finger, it's going to go kind of on the front, the face of the finger, and it's going to go 7, 7, 7 like that. And then your first finger is going to grab the 5th fret of the A. Now this is a shape a lot of people struggle with because the bar is here now rather than here. Now this is going to be, the pressure is going to be the opposite way around. So instead of it thinking of it going this way, the pressure is going to be kind of going this way around. Now, if I show you where my thumb is, it's over here. So that means you've got this kind of trapping action. So the thumb's pushing that way and the first finger's going this way. So you get this. So it's more going this way. So I'm almost thinking about trying to get it on the kind of side or the corner. I know fingers don't have corners, but you know what I mean. The side of this finger. So I'm putting less emphasis on the first finger because the first finger has just really got to get that one note. So it's here. So it's going that way. So that's 4 shapes. You've got the E rooted major, E rooted minor, by just taking the middle finger off. Then you've got the A rooted major, and then the A rooted minor, like that. So if the 5th fret still feels a bit tough, think about where your thumb is, think about where your wrist is. You don't want your thumb creeping up like that. From these open chords, your thumb has been living most of its life up here. It's time it needs to go down here a little bit, and you want that kind of action. Other tips, think about the twist. So on the major, minor, on the E string, think about this kind of action. Imagine you're going to try and play it on the side of your finger rather than the square front like that. And then the A rooted major, think of it going the opposite way. You want that kind of trapping action. I find that I actually do that same motion on an open G chord. If I do an open G, my thumb tends to be, if you can see that, over this side. So I've got that same opposite force like that. So it might be something that you already do on an open chord without thinking about it. That's number 1. That's Barre Chords. Hope that helps. See how you do.